Welcome to Successful Living with Bill Napick. Every week we talk about success and everything that goes along with it. You'll learn the principles of success, how to achieve success, and learn to overcome challenges that may be getting in the way of success in your life. You'll hear from Bill Napick, a radio personality and business development expert, along with insight from special guests. If you're ready to find your path to success or take the success you're enjoying to the next level, stay tuned. Successful Living with Bill Napick is on right now.
And welcome to the show, Successful Living with Bill Napick. That's me. And today, Successful Living with Robert Sakowitz. He is the CEO of a company called Huzzah Corporation. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bill. Nice to be with you.
Yes, always great to see you. And when we think about success, boy, your name is almost a household word here in Houston, Texas, and well beyond. But let's tell people, first of all, Hazak Corporation, in case they don't know. Tell us about your company.
Well, Hazak Corporation is a business strategies and marketing consulting firm that's multi-industry and multinational. I started in the retail industry, literally marking shirts at the age of 9 in the receiving room, and built that up on a continual basis in the retail industry until $8 oil became a little difficult for people to pay their. Oh, yeah. That was in June of 1985. And all of the banks that were the Houston banks, with the exception of Frost, actually, went under. Major real estate companies, retail. We found an Australian partner who was $2.5 billion partner who'd come to the United States and bought Bonwit Teller in New York and B. Altman, and they did a joint venture with us to emerge from a restructuring. And then they got in trouble with the crash in Wall Street in the late 80s. So they liquidated everything, and I was faced with literally all my net worth that had been in the stores and everything we'd put back into the company. You know, people always said I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. The silver spoon was always part of the inventory. So we were always investing back into the company. So I received a phone call. I didn't know what I was going to do. Received a phone call from some folks I knew in Canada. And there were people that I had known from the fashion collections and the shows in Europe and doing business. And they said, you've gone through a lot, and we're going through some real problems. And I said, well, what is it I can help you do? What do you foresee? And they said, well, we need to get off of our personal guarantees, and we need help keeping the family together because we're killing each other. The family's pointing fingers and destroying and all that. So I picked up the phone and called a friend of mine who was the head of restructuring and bankruptcy at Arthur Andersen, Bob Ogle. And I said, Bob, how do you charge for this stuff? I didn't even know what consulting charges were and how do you do this? And he told me, and long story short, they sent me the check to go up there and engaged me. I did that. I did help them to get off their personals and also to save the family. And that started a series of other calls from other people, IKEA, Saks Fifth Avenue, and then I've done work with Highland Village. But the practice has gone now beyond retail and real estate development, even though I still continue to get calls for that and do that. There's oil and gas industry things, software companies, supply chain management. I was on the board of a company, various other assignments. And one of the things that Hazak does and that I have as a perspective is, having been on 3 different bank boards and Houston branch of the Dallas Federal Reserve and chaired that, Continental Airlines board for 14 years, a number of engagements, I get a different perspective on any industry. One of the major problems blocking the success for some people and some companies is that they're siloed. They're so used to looking in a certain direction and at certain things certain ways. And I know that even myself from having been in the retail business and run our business. When I got outside of it and wasn't running my own retail business, I actually said, wow, why didn't I look at this differently? But you're in that silo and you don't want to change. People really, it's not so much that they get into a comfort zone, is that they don't necessarily identify the change that's necessary, and they are reluctant to make changes because it's difficult. Change is difficult.
Well, there's no question. It certainly helps to learn from other industries, other businesses. But before we continue that, Robert, I do want to go back because you made me think about. We talk about success. We talk about here. Life is we're living life every day for many years. But going back to you were saying one of your first jobs was marking shirts. Yes. I remember one of my first jobs at age 10 and 11. I was working in a barbershop, Ed's Barbershop in Pennsylvania, sweeping hair, emptying the ashtrays at that time. People were smoking in the barbershop and straightening magazines. I got to tell you, I learned so many business lessons that I think about even today, back those many years ago. Give us a word on maybe some of the things you learned with the first job and the excitement of that first job. I mean, I loved it.
Oh, well, this was, I every summer and every holiday, I worked in our family store. I guess one of them is I was a teenager, and a man came in, and he had a pair of shoes in a box. And it was a beat-up old box, and the shoes were far more beat up than the box even. And he said, "These shoes haven't performed. I want my money back." And I looked at him, and, of course, we'd been taught not to say no. So I went to the buyer and department manager, and I showed him the shoes. And he said, "Robert, let's go back to the office for a second." So we went back to the office. And he looked in his book and he said, "We haven't carried this model of these," and they were Johnson Murphy shoes, I remember. He said, "We haven't carried this model of Johnson Murphy shoes for at least 12 years. This is a pretty unreasonable request."
Totally.
So we're walking out of the office, and my great uncle, Simon Sakowitz, walks over, and he sort of was pulling on his lip. And he said, "What seems to be the problem, fellas?" And we explained. I said, "Uncle Simon, this is what," or Mr. Simon, we called each other Mr. Simon, Mr. Tobe, Mr. Robert, Otherwise, if you said Mr. Sakowitz, 3 people, 4 people would turn around.
Yeah.
So he said, I see. And he wants his money back, our new pair of shoes. And I said, "Yes, sir, that's what he's asked for." And he smiled and he said, "Go ahead and give it to him." And I said, "Mr. Simon," he said, "I know. I understand. He knows he's getting away with murder, but he's going to go out and he's going to tell all his friends that he really, really snookered us. And in fact, he's going to not look good to his friends, and they're going to say, 'What a great company we are.'" I never forgot that as far as taking care of customers. Think about the long-run consequences, not just that one pair of shoes.
That's right. It is the long term, and that's such a great example. Also, so Robert, give us a word when you started again the consulting Hazak. Yes. What year was that again?
1990, actually.
1990.
Been in it for 28 years now, international and national. And
so now you know how to charge people. Right? You've gotten some practice.
Oh, I will tell you how that happened too. Not only did I learn the engagement and all, but when I was engaged by IKEA, they had just taken over 7 or 8 stores in California and had the one store in Houston. And because they had 7 or 8 in California and they'd taken over this group that they had been subject of a lawsuit, they had the critical mass in California, but they didn't have it in Houston. And the Houston store was something like 235,000 square feet.
It's big.
But it was doing less than $17 million. It was really, really bad. And they said, "Tell us what to do in Houston, including close it." So I said, "Okay, but what are your sacred cows?" And he said, "What do you mean sacred cows? Nobody's ever asked me that." And I said, "A sacred cow is when I get 2 to 3 months into this study and I find out some problems and you say, 'Oh, no, we can't touch that. We can't change that.' That's a sacred cow. I need to know those beforehand." And they said, "Well, I've been asked that before, but I guess the first is that Ingvar Kamprad, our owner, is real proud of Sweden. And that's why we paint the stores blue and yellow, the color of the Swedish flag. The second is he's very proud of that serpentine layout." And so I said, "All right, but," and they said, "But if you tell us we need to change that, we'll look at it. We'll consider it." I said, "Okay. On the other hand, I also have sort of a sacred cow." And they said, "What is that?" I mean, we're engaging you. We're going to be paying you. I said, "Yeah, but I really don't want the engagement. If I am going to do my report, and if I can't give it to person to person. In other words, in person, if I can't give that report and that layout and the series of changes to the either executive vice president or CFO or CEO, I don't want to do this, because if it's going to go to a vice president of some division and there's something in the report that hurts that division, he's going to put it in his lower desk drawer and it's never going to see the light of day. And that, I don't want to do that. And they said, fine. We did. I mean, I took out an onion skin, relayed out the store, actually created, after a focus group study that I had done, and talked to a lot of women who told me that they were extremely claustrophobic when they were pregnant, and therefore, because of their focus on kids' rooms and all the rest of that, that was a major customer concern. So I created 3 cutouts along the way of the serpentine layout that said, "This way out." And they implemented that. Well, I got a letter after they implemented all of the changes, including departmental restructurings, and they followed it, asked me to do it with them, and I did. Got a letter from them that said, when we first retained you, Houston was the 20th out of 20 stores in the United States. And now it's outperforming 17 stores of the 20. And I called them on the phone. And I said, what a wonderful letter. I will cherish this always. Can I have the new number 20 store? And they said, no, we got your formula. We can use that. I said, wait a minute. Then I really didn't price this engagement according to what could happen. And he said, you sure didn't.
Live and learn.
And so that's when I realized you got to have a success fee added on to just your straight hourly.
That's interesting you say that. That also is parallel in the acting world, going back to actors that get a set fee,
Yes.
but then, as in Jack Nicholson and his portrayal as the Joker in Batman, that was actually set a precedent. He made tons, and probably still making tons of money on
Residuals.
on the residuals
That's
of
right.
that and a piece of the action. So we live and we learn. But I will say this about IKEA. As our city here in Houston, people are moving still at the rapid rate, Robert. It is unbelievable. But as we move around the city, as I move around, I see some certain businesses seem to always, judging by their parking lot, seem to always be pulling them in. Chick-fil-A. I don't care
That's
what
right.
time I drive by a Chick-fil-A. The drive-in windows at 9 at night, they're still too deep. IKEA is one of those other stores.
It is done extremely well.
It is unbelievable. There's people there
They've
all the time.
doubled the size of it.
It is fascinating. Well, give us another example. First of all, of some of the things that you've been so successful in the retail world, and now for these almost 3 decades in the consulting world. What are some of the things that you would impart on people that, from a success standpoint, what are the core principles that have guided you, or at least one or two that have helped you all these years to where you stay steady?
You're never going to be successful if you don't listen to other people. And all too often, people, even consulting companies, walk in with a preset formula that this is what we do and this is how we're going to do it. If anyone wants to be successful, they've got to listen to the other person. Secretary James Baker once said I heard him at a presentation, and he said, if you really want to get anything done, you have to find out what the other guy's pain is that you can help alleviate. You've got to be able to help him solve his problem in order for you to be able to be successful in what you're trying to do. And I think identifying the changes that are necessary, which sometimes take an awful lot of time to be able to identify them, and then being open to having identified them to the change. Because a lot of times the people will say, well, we can't do that. Well, the rejoinder to that should be, why can't you do it? And let's discuss that further. The other is that some people are always looking for, and this is not just a company, this is just personally, they're looking for success as if there's some form of a pinnacle. And all there's lots of books, and there's lots of slogans, and there's lots of platitudes all about success. The key is that there really is, to use Gertrude Stein's old quote, there really is no there.
There's no shortcut. You can get there faster.
Well, but there's no there. There's no. In other words, frequently when you become successful, you don't even really have the right definition of what it is that made you that successful, and it passes you by, and you say, wow, now that I look back, that was my high point, or I had the wrong concept of what I really wanted to achieve. So it really is a matter of people saying that the definition of success on a personal basis is that it's for sure, it is absolute certain that financially, sometimes physically, sometimes emotionally, sometimes psychologically, you're going to get knocked down. And the key is how you get back up again, how you decide to get back up, and pull yourself together and say, I'm just going to keep going and I'm going to do better. And that's really what you need to do with companies as well, is, okay, what is it that's going to get us there? And let's, buckle up and get ready for the flight.
It's funny. I was just, and I would encourage people, there's a thing called Masterclass, masterclass.com, and that's the opportunity for us to learn from people that are doing and have been successful in things like, for example, Gordon Ramsay has a class. Mm-hmm. He's talking about food. Steve Martin talks about comedy. Herbie Hancock talks about playing the piano. But Gordon Ramsay, I just saw this one yesterday at the end. He achieved in I think it was a period of 4 or 5 years, the 3rd Michelin star in one of his restaurants. Mm-hmm. And he said, people come to me and say, what would you do if you lost those stars or that star? And he says, I'm not going to go in a corner and cry. He says, I'm going to come back and get it again.
Good for him.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the idea.
Exactly,
we know we're going to be knocked down.
You know you're going to be knocked down.
That's
it's
life.
As certain as it can be. Absolutely. And the company, Hazak, has had a lot of different clients. One of the things that is quite interesting that we're a partner and I are working on right now is we have 4 partners in the company, and we're starting. It's a startup, but it is a new company that it's called Documents Forever, and it is a software platform in blockchain that will protect documents, all of your documents in the cloud. And we're working on that. I still am working with a company called Huzzah Corporation that does supply chain management, but more than that, scenario-based planning modeling. And they did it for the Panama Canal Authority, for them to be able to get their $5.5 billion to build the new locks for the Panama Canal. Most people don't really have comprehension of what the supply chain management is, nor scenario-based planning modeling. Scenario-based planning modeling, very specifically, is what's necessary if you're going to determine solutions and get funded, because you have to show the benefit to cost ratio and the ROI. And in order to do that, all the financial people need to see, okay, if this, then that. What happens here? What happens there? And instead of just raising the tariff, which the Panama Canal was suggested by some other people when they sent out their RFP, Endeavor said, no, you need to do a competitive price route choice analysis model of all the different shipping lanes. And they did 10 different models and were successful in getting the $5.5 billion. And now the new locks are open and operating and ahead of schedule.
Awesome. And we're talking with Robert Sakowitz, the CEO of Huzzah Corporation. You can go to Hazak.com. That's Hazak, right, Robert?
Right.
And on the website, you have many things there. One of the things, of course, you're talking about international sales, consulting, starting a new company, new products you help people with, but also one I'd like you to tell us about, Bricks and Clicks. That's on your what we do, Bricks and Clicks. For those that don't know, what is that?
For those who don't know, Bricks and Clicks are just what they sound like. Bricks means physical stores, and clicks means the web and internet stores, Amazon, etc. And the whole thing that everybody talks about today is, oh my gosh, the retail business is dead and all of this. The retail stores are dying, department stores are dying. The ones that are not well managed are dying. The ones that don't have good locations are dying. There's just much more competition.
So many elements, service, products,
exactly.
All those things.
But what started out as being bricks versus clicks is now bricks and clicks. It's called omni-channeling. And basically, you need to be in all of them. You need to have your websites and be able to sell through the web as well as physical locations, because you'll notice Amazon and the others who started as what are called pure play on the web now are opening their physical stores. They're opening bricks as well as supplementing their clicks. And, retail, remember, is not an industry in and of itself. I was on record in the 1970s before the National Retail Merchants Association in a speech I made at that time, talking about the aspect of what retail is. It's not stores. Retail is the end point of the entire channeling and of creativity of creating a product and then manufacturing it and then selling it either wholesale or to a jobber and then someone retail. Retail is the last mile. It's the last point. You sell it on an individual basis. That's why it's the French word for retail is détail, D-E-T-A-I-L, detail, selling it in the detail. And so it's the one-on-one. Well, what's the best way to do one-on-one? Is it through bricks, so to speak, in physical stores, face-to-face? Yes, for some products, it will always be that. Cosmetics, yes, new cosmetics, some fabrics that you have to feel on garments. That's never going to be able to sell as easily as it is in a store physically. Online. Online, on the other hand, if you know the commodity and it's just a commodity, everybody knows what it is. It's price and delivery and service. So it really depends upon what the product is and what the store does as to whether or not it's going to survive in the retail industry, quote unquote, the retail, because the consumer is buying more and more. It's not like the consumer's not buying merchandise.
And Robert, with the last minute or so, let's tell people how they can reach out to you and what else you'd like them to know.
Well, I'd like them to know that I love challenges and I love building things. I like being able to help companies get to their next step. When people say, what do you do? I say I'm a business doctor. I help companies get to where they want to get to on their next steps. And the way you contact me is R. Sakowitz, R-S-A-K-O-W-I-T-Z at Hazak, Hazak.com. Or my number's cell phone is 713-823-1183. Happy
One
to
more
talk to
time
people.
on the phone.
713-823-1183.
And really on your website, there's some great information they could learn more about you.
And that is Hazak.com, Hazak.com.
And give us a quick word, the name Hazak. You've told us before.
It means be strong.
Be strong.
That's right.
Super cool. Robert, and also as we think about here we are, this year is rapidly moving. Just a word on the future here. For 2018, how do you see just the Houston economy? It's pretty exciting so far.
I see the Houston economy still doing extremely well. One of the major problems with the Houston economy is being able to do two things, which I'll hopefully talk to you about at some future date, is the congestion that is created, which will actually hurt our economy. And the other thing is, if we don't get the coastal spine, or the Ike Dike as it's called, built, we are going to be susceptible to these continuing floods and hurricanes, and that can hurt our future substantially.
Very nice. You have been listening to Successful Living with Bill Nampick, and today with Robert Sakowitz. So glad you joined us. Thank you, Robert, for being on the show.
Great to be here.
And we'll
Thanks
get you
again.
back again to explain some of these other things. And until next week, you can go to radiobill.net for so much more. Again, radiobill.net. That'll connect you to the YouTube channel, past interviews. We thank Robert T. Sakowitz right here today, Huzzah Corporation. Until next week, we'll see you then, radiobill.net.
Successful Living is sponsored by Radio Bill.